Should I buy a house now or wait? I think that's probably one of the biggest questions I'm getting just with overall clientele, whether it be individual investors, local or in-state, maybe first-time home buyers wanting to purchase a first home, or an individual that maybe bought within the last couple years, sitting at maybe a 2, 3, or 4% interest rate, and they're confused as to whether or not they should be buying maybe that next level house, kind of upgrading from where they are now, or should they wait? But before we jump into today's video, if you guys are finding the content on this channel useful, please make sure to give us a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications to always be notified when I release another video. So the first thing that comes to mind when I'm talking with potential clients, investors, whatever it may be when it comes to purchasing a house, is decision making. Got to understand the stakes of either not making a decision or making a decision. Now, there's always going to be a right and there's always going to be a wrong. Now, whether or not those get muddied in between, that's going to be, I guess, you to find out at the end of the day. Now, one thing I can tell you is if an individual comes to me and basically tells me their story and I outright think that purchasing a home is not a good idea, or vice versa, if I offer them an opportunity to speak with my lender and then my lender speaks to them as well as myself and says, buying a house is likely not a smart decision for yourself right now, I'm never going to push someone into a house. But a decision to purchase a house is still a massive decision. Now, I actually just filmed an entire video on a story where a woman basically made the decision not to purchase a house. Not to say that her decision is either right or wrong, only her at the end of the day, whether it be next month, next year, or next decade, or whatever amount of time in the future, only she is gonna be able to look back and determine whether or not that decision that she made of not purchasing a house was the right decision or wrong decision. Now, one thing I can tell you is I've made about 12 real estate purchases, or basically 12 different transactions where I have purchased either a lot or a pre-owned home or a already basically brand new home. And I can basically say none of them have been so far a regret. And honestly, that says a lot because I had a property that I recently sold that I didn't make a ton of money on, but it still wasn't a regret. I learned a lot from purchasing that house. So unfortunately, number one, is not something I'm going to be able to have a ton of impact on you. It's going to be either you and your decision solely. That's a lot of what my real estate decisions were. I wasn't engaged, I wasn't married, I didn't have any kids until recently. So a lot of my real estate investments or just purchases in general were really, hey, Casey, does it make sense? Yes, it makes sense. Okay, let's jump right in and make the purchase. The same thing's gonna be held to you. If it makes sense for you, if it makes sense for your family, if it makes sense for you and your significant other, then make the purchase. But it does require either you yourself having a conversation with someone that's knowledgeable and not someone that is going to push you into the decision, or just having that conversation with your family, whether it be your significant other, whoever it may be, have the conversation and really dig deep into whether or not that decision makes sense for you. Now, moving on to number two, and this is something that I am unfortunately seeing a lot right now, and that's people trying to time the market. It's kind of the common pitfall that people have, is trying to find kind of that perfect condition of purchasing a home. Just like any other stock, there may be a prime opportunity to buy. But one thing I can tell you is if you just continue to buy, shares today, shares next week, and shares next year of that particular stock that you want to buy, it's just cost averaging it and making it to a point where regardless of when you bought, whether or not you bought at a high and then you just brought your cost per average of that stock down because you've continued to buy over the last many years. It's the same thing when it comes to real estate. You can sit here and time the market, but at the end of the day, you're really not going to have any impact as to whether or not the rates go up or if they go down. Now, this is going to be a lot of what real estate agents are telling you. Unfortunately, we get a bad rap in terms of feeling like we're forcing people into a home to be able to collect a commission check. I tell people all the time, this is not what I do. I don't sell homes. I am a real estate agent and I make a living selling homes, quote, selling homes, but I don't push people into a house. What a lot of real estate agents are saying right now is you can either purchase now where rates are, let's say 6 or 7%. You can obviously get a discount more than likely in your given market because there is a ton of inventory, not a lot of active buyers, so you can negotiate pretty significantly on a purchase. Now, the downside to that is you're gonna get a lower priced home, but you're gonna have, as I mentioned before, a 6 or 7% interest rate. Now you could time the market and maybe hope that rates are going to get better in the future. But one thing that is for certain, if rates do go down, housing becomes much more affordable. If housing becomes much more affordable, more buyers come into the market. More buyers come into the market essentially means, yes, prices will go up. So the two options you really have right now are buy now with a little bit higher interest rate, and you get to potentially refinance down the road whenever rates do go down. That's the big question, is when will they go down? But at least you're locking in that home purchase price right now. The other side is you maybe wait a year, maybe wait 2 years, 3, 5 years, who knows how long it's gonna be that rates finally come down to a point where it makes housing affordable. Well, that $400,000 house that you looked at this month, if you decide to go back around and try to purchase it in 3 years from now, because now rates are now in the 4s and it's a whole lot more affordable for you to purchase, it's not gonna be a $400,000 house anymore. It's gonna be more like $450,000 or $500,000 or $550,000, depending on where you're located. All I can tell you is if rates do go down, home prices are almost inevitably going to go up. And again, that's not the realtor in me pushing you to buy the house. Going back to the very first point I made in this video, you have to have that conversation with yourself or your loved ones to determine whether or not purchasing right now makes sense. Make sure to leave out the noise from afar. Now, whether or not it's your skeptical friends and family saying wait for a crash or negative stuff on social media, if you search for negative material on social media, trust me, you will find it. You will also find plenty of positive material on social media if you want to look for it. Guys, it's social media. At the end of the day, if you're looking for it, you're gonna be able to find it. Now, one thing that I can say as an individual that continues to purchase homes, it does have to make sense, as I mentioned in point number 1. Number 2, I unfortunately do have 2 properties that I didn't time well enough. Now, if I could have done things differently, I would love to have my property that's taken out with about $1 million loan. I would love to have that at the 3, maybe 4% interest rate. Instead, I have that at close to 8%. Now, the good part of that is I made a wise decision and it still cash flows. It still makes me money on a monthly or annual basis, but it could definitely make me more money if I had a 3, 4, or 5% interest rate. But my hope is in the future, I can refinance that and make even more money, but I'm still making money as it stands. Meaning I made the decision at that given point that regardless if I was sitting at a near 8% interest rate, it still made sense. I didn't allow the outside noise to get to me and affect my decision. And now just to hit one last bullet point here, because as I kind of mentioned earlier in this video, it may seem a little bit biased from an individual that literally sells homes for a living. So I do want to hit on the other side of the spectrum. So someone that may be leaning more towards not purchasing, just like the individual that I just finished filming a video about earlier this week, or just someone that's maybe a little bit more, I guess, pessimistic in terms of the real estate market, the overall cost to buying a home. I'm not going to sit here and say, buy a home. I'm not gonna sit here and try to convince you to buy a home. Now, one thing I can tell you is there are a ton of benefits to home ownership, but if you're an individual that just likes to have things much more simpler, meaning you just pay your landlord, you call them when you need something fixed, and you don't wanna worry about upkeep and maintenance of a house or a building or a backyard or whatever it may be, then renting definitely will make more sense for you. However, one thing I will never get on board with is if you're spending $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month, if not more, on rent, and there's affordable housing within your market to be able to purchase and spend the same amount that you're spending in rent, if not less, on an actual house that's going to be an appreciating asset, I'm gonna probably wanna sit you down and show you just the power in investing in real estate, because that's just absolutely throwing a ton of money away on an annual basis. But at the end of the day, guys, there is so much that goes into purchasing a house. You're gonna make sure that your finances are right. If you've got a large family or a significant other, there's a lot of conversations and decisions that need to be made between you two or multiple people. Obviously, as you get more individuals involved in making a decision, regardless if it's just purchasing a house or making any decision in life, it's going to become more difficult when you've got multiple parties that have to kind of give a thought or process into making that decision. So by no means am I ever going to sit here and say that purchasing a house or making the decision to purchase a house is an easy one. Now, I will say it will come easier for some folks, while other folks will definitely struggle in that decision-making process of whether or not it makes sense for them. But as I mentioned, as I started out this video, it all goes back to step 1. You need to have the conversations. You need to think for yourself. And if it makes sense, go ahead and make that purchase. Go ahead and make that investment. All I can tell you is over the last decade, I have purchased about 12 different properties. And from a financial perspective, it has absolutely changed my life. I've also seen the benefit of others purchase investment properties or just purchase houses to begin with. I'm at a point now where I've been licensed for almost a decade. I've helped individuals purchase a first home, use the equity that they've built in that first first home to then go buy a second, if not third home at this point. So I've seen the power in real estate, not just in my personal life and investment growth, but also in individuals that I had the opportunity to help purchase an investment or just a primary home, and seen the growth in the value with that property to the point where it's been a huge blessing for them. But home ownership at the end of the day is not for everyone. It's either gonna make sense, it's not gonna make sense, or you're probably gonna find somewhere in between and have to make that tough decision as to whether or not you need to purchase, you need to invest, or you don't. The decision at the end of the day is either gonna be solely yours or your family's. My hope for you is you make the right decision, regardless if that's right now or 10, 20, 50 years in the future. You look back and you appreciate the decision making, whether it's purchasing or not purchasing, and don't look back with regret, wishing that you had done one or the other. But that's all I got for you guys this week. I appreciate all the love and support. Make sure to like and subscribe. It really does help, and stay tuned for the next video.